And happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm Scott Mitchell. I am your host for this Wednesday night news stream. And when you hear Nocturnal playing with Chris Hicks featuring Ryan Welton, or is it the other way around? I don't know. Maybe if we had somebody we could ask.
Honest with you, it's all Chris Hicks. I wrote the song, wrote the melody, did the whole thing, but I sequenced it on a chord. That song did not come to life until Chris Hicks played the sax on it. Not a chance it would sound 1/10 as good.
I don't know. Get Back didn't sound good till Paul started singing it. So,
And
the writer is the one that makes the difference.
there you
So,
go. All right, cool.
So we say hello, everyone, and to Ryan Welton. And Ryan's with us this evening. Augusta is on the way back, along with I'm trying to think of who the other reporter that's up there.
Hunter McKee.
Hunter McKee. Apologies to Hunter. It's been a long week already for this old man, who was on last night. I was producing that behind the scenes of her Education Watch, which has really had some good numbers, by the way,
Yeah.
Ryan.
Well, it was a little bit of insight into that. The folks at Moore Public Schools tweeted it out to their followers. And that's one of the things, when you have people of high influence like Dr. Romines come on, the entire district gets behind it and wants them to be heard. I thought that was, I was making sure that the live stream is on, so I watched it also. I thought it was a fantastic, very empathetic conversation. It hits you in the feels, but it also still satisfied that itch to find out how things happen in a school district. What Dr. Romines talked about the need to look after mental health, not only for the students, but for the teachers and administrators. They were just great reminders of how hard these districts work.
And people will see that when we play the video shortly, when we're done talking about wildfires and behind the scenes thing here in just a minute. You'll see that interview I did with Augusta probably a couple of hours ago. She and Hunter are on the way back. They had the president. She said we're going to reach out and touch the president today. So a lot there coming up in this program. And at the very end, Ryan Welton will be back, but by videotape, because about a week ago, I was able to get him, and Dino Lalli together and get their picks for music. And so we're going to play, and that's a long video. It's about an hour that I'll be sending to Ryan. I've been holding on to this because there's some great Christmas things in there, and we're going to give you a little insight into that. It's about what Ryan's recommending music-wise and what Dino's recommending for movies, and it's all really fun, and that'll be coming up really soon. So also, let me just dovetail on what you just said, Ryan, which was when I was watching from behind the scenes last night, Augusta talked to Superintendent Romines, who knows a thing or two about tragedy. It's not he's not had to do the sorts of things that superintendents are supposed to have to do.
Right.
When you think about the Moore School District. But I always, if you could feel somebody reaching out from 1,000 miles away and putting their arm around that Mayfield administrator. And when he was advising her, you got to take care of yourself and this is going to happen. And you said the word empathetic. I was taken aback, not because I didn't think he was capable, but I know he is obviously, but just how incredibly empathetic he was. And his heart was just going out. I mean, you hear that term all the time. Our hearts go out. I mean, his heart was going out last night.
Right. And it manifested in practical advice that frankly could be applied to anybody going through the same thing.
A tough one. All right. So I just have a few minutes with Ryan Welton. We saw, speaking of natural disasters, I suppose it could have been worse. Maybe you're not in the way of these fires, but another incredible weather day, which drives news in this state. I know it. You know it. Everybody knows it. But it had to be behind the scenes. It had to be one crazy day in terms of just trying to keep your finger on this, because it's kind of unlike weather systems where you can see where it's coming, right? You didn't even know where these fires are going to break out.
Right. I mean, you knew where the winds were going to blow, and it's in an area that is largely shared in terms of the DMA as they talk about it. The Panhandle, there are a lot of folks who get KWTV. There are a lot of folks who get Amarillo stations. And we had our trackers out there. You had Marty Logan. Marty Logan is retired, but he knows that area so well, and he was out there. Val and Amy were out there. We had all sorts of folks. Storm went up to Woodward, and, looking after the fires that were in Guyman and Cherokee before that. We had a couple fires try to break out here in the metro, and you don't know exactly where it's going to happen. So you just take your best guess. And we aimed for northwestern Oklahoma and, of course, Guyman, where Val and Amy were for most of the afternoon. I know that there were sustained winds in Guyman, according to the Messanet, of up to like 55 miles an hour with gusts as high as 80, which is crazy. We got video from a News 9 viewer that showed just how poor the visibility was along Highway 412 just east of Guyman. That was crazy. That's impassable. That is pull off the road, just find a convenience store bad. And then, of course, the land burning, the impact on animals, just a dreadful day for the people who are having to deal with that.
What's the latest situation? I saw Val and Amy. I saw their stream just a few minutes ago. I just didn't see any flames.
Right. Well, I think that they are headed to another location to cover for later tonight, which would indicate to me that maybe I think the fight's going on, because I'll tell you, we just got some indication that the folks in Guthrie were sending a whole bunch of crews. And I say Guthrie, Logan County proper, we're sending some crews up there to assist with Guyman, because you could have all of your folks out there fighting this fire. They need to be relieved at some point. So you to get the help of your neighbors is pretty big there. But I don't have any indication right now that anything is more urgent at 7 p.m. than it was at 2 p.m. when the Texas County emergency manager asked folks on the west side of Guyman to evacuate. So that came out at 2, and then the fires burned throughout the afternoon.
Pretty incredible. Have you had any rest? Anybody at the station had any rest since Voldemort bolted for Southern Cal? Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's been a weekend where it just wasn't off the scale,
Well, whether it's sports or severe weather or breaking news, we're all over it. I mean, all journalists are working a lot, and the news cycle in this case has been merciless by all means. But that's what we do. In fact, it's one of the mottos of our digital team at Griffin, and it's coined by digital producer Nate. He says, "It's what we do." And so when the breaking news happens, even if it's in the Panhandle, even if it's sports, even if it's not to minimize any of it, it just doesn't really matter what it is. If it matters to Oklahomans, we're on it.
One final question, and I ask Augusta, and not that they've been busy. It's not like they've got have time for coffee with Payne right now. But when you're talking to the folks in weather and they saw what happened, and I'm doubling back to Kentucky, right. When they saw what happened, which was in December at night, monster tornadoes, they've seen this damage path. I think New York Times today was going, well, was this caused by climate change, or was just, everybody's all over the map on this.
Right.
Internally, as the leading stations in the state with the biggest team of trackers, and obviously the leader in weather, nobody's even close. When you're talking to the team and you've had some time to talk about this, their observations about what happened, Missouri, Kentucky, Arkansas, anything that stands out to you?
Yeah. I don't know if it's officially the longest long track tornado ever, but I don't know that there is any storm that comes to mind that had a longer track of being, just that mammoth a tornado. But I think the thing that stands out biggest to me, I had a conversation with David yesterday. We were talking specifically about, the Kentucky tornado versus the Moore tornado. And I think one of the things that might be underreported is the buildings and the homes that it destroyed in Kentucky. And that it is speculative to say this, but it's thought that even an EF3 tornado could have destroyed a lot of those homes. I don't know if homes in Oklahoma are built to withstand a little bit more, but these particular homes, an EF5 was definitely going to destroy them. An EF3 probably had. So I think that there will be discussion about, I hate to say anything pejorative about any home or building, but, not every structure is the same.
You just give me a great idea for an interview, because I know there are builders in the state that we're taping this series with Secretary Ming about energy that's underway now. And he was talking about building now, of course, geothermal and solar panels. It's no longer George Jetson stuff. And also builders who build roofs with special clips to hold down for high winds get as much as anything here. So it's a great topic. Well, I know you're exhausted. I know the whole team's exhausted. I was just, when I finished up talking with Augusta and Hunter, was like, I hope you guys are not going to try to drive this one all the way through, because I know they're exhausted and the whole team's exhausted.
100%.
So, all right. Ryan Welton, who everybody hears his music every week.
Yes.
Every time we do a live stream, you see Ryan and hear Ryan's music. And thanks for taking time. We got any bowl games coming up of interest? I mean, you're an enormous football fan.
So, yes, and we have tremendous coverage coming up. Statewide, you have TU playing in the bowl out in South Carolina in Myrtle Beach against Old Dominion on Monday, and we've got crews covering that. We've got crews who will be in San Antonio to cover OU Oregon, the Bob Stoops Bowl, if you will. And then, of course, you have Oklahoma State, who's going to be in the Fiesta Bowl playing against Notre Dame on January the 1st. We've got it covered, not only the preparations, but the actual action game day of.
It's going to be great. It's going to be some great coverage. And, of course, you'll be right there. Where's UCLA playing?
I think UCLA is playing in the Holiday Bowl, and I think they're playing against Wake Forest or Purdue, which makes me a bad Bruin fan, sort of pseudo fan. They're playing somebody.
You don't care. Just want to beat them. Okay.
Right.
I appreciate that. Okay, man. Thanks for the update on that. I was getting my shoulder worked on today. I was asking who's an orthopod friend of mine, and I'm going to be able to do about 200 innings next year, it feels like.
Oh, nice.
And I said, "You going to get some time off?" He goes, "No, I'm going with the Sooners down to that game." So,
yeah.
Anyway, everybody's going to be following that. And then, I've got a freshman now. Well, it's not a freshman. It's going to be a sophomore at Oklahoma State, which is hard for me to say, of course, as everybody knows that story. But that OSU Notre Dame game is going to be one for the ages. So
I agree. I mean, I think that there are reasons, no matter whether you're TU, OU, OSU, or none of the above, to get behind each one of these teams. I always say I don't root for uniforms. I root for people. And this is a great People Bowl season for Oklahoma teams.
Yeah, Notre Dame, who got, hosed over by their coach.
Right.
So we sort of understand that. But anyway, go Pokes on that one. Ryan Welton, digital chief guru at News 9, News on 6, Griffin Companies. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right. See you soon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I mentioned just a few minutes earlier that I had a long conversation. It's not a long conversation, about 17 or 18 minutes with Augusta McDonnell, who's usually the co-host on this each Wednesday evening, and Hunter McKee, who were leaving Kentucky. They were there. I think I might even have a picture at some point in the program of some of the live shots they were doing from Kentucky, and then the live shots that Nora O'Donnell was doing for CBS. And Hunter and Augusta were doing it with higher ratings and a lot less lighting equipment up there. So it's an interesting picture to see the contrast. If I don't get it up on the program tonight, I'll put it on Twitter and Facebook. But it had Augusta as they were leaving Kentucky about the day, and they were obviously exhausted. But here's their story about as they were leaving Kentucky today and what they saw today. Good afternoon, Augusta. You and Hunter have got to be exhausted from this week. When did you leave?
We're getting pretty tired. We left on Saturday about 7 p.m. I had a 6 o'clock deadline, so I filed that story, and then we packed up and left. And we got to Arkansas late Saturday night, and then Sunday morning we were about 3 hours from Monette, Arkansas, which was our first destination, and that's where a nursing home resident was killed, and another person hit in this kind of rural area of northeastern Arkansas was killed. Northwestern Arkansas. And so we talked to this kind of like small rural community where that was just destroyed. We did a story on a family that survived, and then we drove north into Mayfield, and we got to Mayfield late Sunday night. Filed our story from Mayfield. We actually stayed in a town about 20 minutes from here, which is what I'm hearing from a lot of people, because there's really the hotels and whatever housing is left in Mayfield is, for there's 10,000 residents in this city. A lot of them are displaced. So you can imagine, people are staying with friends and going to nearby towns to stay with people and get hotels and different things. But so we ended up staying a little bit outside of Mayfield. Monday morning is when we came into town and really saw all of the devastation for the first time. We drove through Sunday night. And at that time, it was dark, and all we could really see were like our headlights on destroyed buildings, trees snapped in half. I mean, just the wreckage in the dark was super, super ominous, super creepy. Just kind of like, I couldn't even like make connections in my brain of what I was seeing. And then Monday morning when we came in and really saw everything, and I just put my camera on my shoulder, went for a walk, and there's a story on every block of somebody who survived something, somebody who's going to have to rebuild something. Really extreme stories that for people who are going through this, this is a lifetime moment for them, and a formative experience. And I feel like people, when they go through something this extreme, like they want the world to know. So we've talked to dozens of people, picked out the stories we could and tried to feature, because there's a lot of great national reporting, of course. So we featured a lot of kind of Oklahoma contributions to the cleanup efforts, and talked a little bit about that. So
Have you talked to Payne or anybody at our meteorological end of things yet about? I mean, you talked about your perspective. This is the first big natural disaster of this nature for you, but for folks like David Payne, the experienced chasers who see this from the ground, what have you talked to them at all, and what they're hearing about where this ranks in terms of destructiveness in storms? Of course, we've seen several of them in Oklahoma.
Right. Okay, so there's a couple different things to that question. So I haven't talked directly with David. However, I saw a link to a story he did a couple of days ago where he explains what happened with this tornado, and I haven't even had time to watch it yet. So I'm interested in reading and learning about that as well. We've just been going, at a breakneck pace to get our stuff filed, get our stories out. But so I think there's something historic in the nature of the tornadoes, multiple tornadoes. That the outbreak itself on Friday it was multiple tornadoes. One of them was historic in the 200-mile path there was one sustained tornado that went, I think, at least 200 miles. And there isn't, unless in the past couple of hours, a meteorologist or someone has determined that the EF ranking of the tornado that 200-mile tornado, which was so destructive, that's the one that went through Mayfield. There's still some debate on, was it an EF 3, 4, 5? So still kind of waiting on that information. But in terms of the destruction itself, I've been talking to, there's a lot of national disaster recovery groups here, and what I've been hearing, it's just this reflection that I've just heard over and over by, correspondents that cover a lot of, natural disasters with a lot of loss of life, and, food groups, or, like the Red Cross or Salvation Army, or, like World Vision. We did a story with them earlier this week. They're used to servicing this type of disaster with basic needs and with, supplies and things like that. And I just keep hearing over and over that this is the worst I've ever seen, is the statement I keep hearing. And so I think the total destruction of a town, it's only 10,000 people, but I shouldn't say total destruction. That's probably like a formal term in some way, but the very widespread destruction in one city where 10,000 people are kind of displaced at this point. That's what makes it really kind of unique. And the fact that, like, you know, people were saying, excuse me, like with like with hurricanes, you know, there's a lot of destruction and damage, but so I've been talking for 5 days straight. There's a lot of destruction and damage, but things like vehicles are still there. So right now, transportation is an issue here because things are just smashed to bits everywhere you look. I was kind of saying in my reporting earlier this week, when I was just making observations, just kind of like as a storytelling tool to try and talk about, to try and just like capture the feel, the moment, the gravitas, like whatever it is of the situation. I was trying to find like home objects in locations where they shouldn't be, like a kitchen sink, you know, in a field, or, you know, those types of things. You see those types of images come out of disasters because I think they capture the chaotic nature of what happens, and it jars your brain to see things out of place like that. Or like, you know, a kitchen totally destroyed, but like a water bottle that didn't tip over. That doesn't make any sense. You know, there's like a chaos to it. And I couldn't find those things. I was looking for like whole objects on the ground in these areas, you know, fields where there's rubble, in downed houses, and I couldn't find them because things were just smashed to bits, everything. So, I mean, all of that to say, something very significant happened here. 74 people are dead just in Kentucky, 88 in several states total, and they're still missing like 100 some people that they, you know, maybe they're okay, but there's no communication. So they've gone to go stay with somebody in Paducah, and they can't, you know, there's no communication, so they don't know if they're alive yet. That's still very much, I mean, that's still very real for people right now, and we are 3, 4, 5 days out. So anyway,
The president showed up today. What was that like? Were you near the president today? And from what you could see, how was he received, and how does it impact an area like that?
Sure. So, of course, the federal resources are very critical. And I've been hearing reporting that the immediate nature of the federal response to this, declaring an emergency, qualified residents here in certain ways to get insurance faster. And I don't understand all the technicalities of this, but there's a mechanism in federal disaster response that releases funds quickly, and that you know, kind of, I think it helps people file insurance claims quickly. There's going to be FEMA grants. There's going to be different things that come. And so the federal response obviously is so critical for a community to recover. He has been, you know, the governor of Kentucky. I feel like Biden had a quote today in his press conference out at the airport hangar in the Graves County Airport where he flew in, where he said, and this was quoted, I think in an article I read, it was like USA Today, and he's quoted saying, "Tornadoes aren't red or blue." And so there's this, and I was like, oh, okay, like that's just, you know, the governor of Kentucky welcomed him, and it seems weird to reflect on the political nature of his interactions coming into this, but you know, it's there. So so those quotes were said, and I you know, the governor of Kentucky and Mitch McConnell even released a statement saying that they were, you know, so pleased that Biden had responded in the way that he did so quickly, releasing so many federal resources in the manner that he did. So there's that going on. I mean, the residents of Mayfield, people were, you know, lining the block. There was a little girl I saw this little girl. She was like in the back behind all of these reporters lining the street. We were right there. He got out of the car, out of his motorcade when he came through Mayfield, and just walked down the street. And there's photos of him. You know, he's kind of being swarmed by the White House press pool. But, you know, we were just watching him walk down the street, talking with people who were sitting on the ground, cleaning up rubble. There's this little girl in the back, and I pulled her to the front because she was like 9 and she had her flowers, and I think she, you know, wanted to go give him these flowers, but she was just right there, and she's like, which one's him? And me and this other reporter were like, he's the one with the white hair, he's right there. And she was so excited, and her house was on that street and had been destroyed. So it was just kind of a sweet moment. But it meant a lot to her, you know what I mean? And this was all, he was coming in as like 2 hours, not even 2 hours earlier, people were starting to put up a fence outside the courthouse in the way that you see at disasters where, kind of like a central memorial. And, a couple of people in the community they've got this fence up, and there was 10,000 flowers there that were being put up on the fence. And there was a photo of each of the victims. And that was being assembled right before Biden arrived.
Are they putting photographs up in terms of people that are missing the way they do at some disasters?
Sure. So I didn't see. So this group, they told me that like a printing company in Murray, which is the town we stayed in, is about 20 minutes away. A printing company had donated their services to print all the images of, sending your family photos of better times, of the people who had died. And so I think, and she told me like we're continuing to print as people who are missing or confirmed dead. So I think this has been in the works for a couple of days. But no, there weren't photos of people who are missing. And I think people are holding out hope that this stops at 74. But with 100 plus people missing, the governor of Kentucky is not confident that that's the case.
I was struck last night behind the scenes watching Superintendent Romines talk to the Mayfield official. It was almost like an uncle talking to a niece. Okay. And it was so along the lines of, do you need something? Can we help you? And then it was almost like he was a counselor talking her through this. Now, here's what's going to happen next. And here's what we experienced. It was very, was very telling about the amount of concern. I mean, the more Superintendent Romines, I mean, he's lived it. Okay. You're talking about everything from natural disasters to the tragedy of the students that were running. But at the same time, there's been, I would say, the information that Oklahomans can help the Kentuckians. I mean, that was really the basis of what you folks were doing, was taking the experiences we've had here into areas that don't have this sort of experience. This is not normal in any shape or to see that kind of destruction. That ain't Tornado Alley, as they say. This is Tornado Alley down here.
Right.
Let me ask you, when we're talking about a personal thing, your thoughts about, you said this was your first really big natural disaster. Hunter, there, you guys have been on the ground doing lots of work for several days. How's it impacted you?
Gosh. So, I've covered, when I was a reporter in Montana, obviously there's severe weather. There's really bad wildfires. There's people, I covered a wildfire one year where like a million acres burned and there's crazy evacuations and all these things going on. But covering the loss of life and just being amidst in this situation where like, all of these people have been killed. That's been heavy. I think I just kind of, standing in the town center where you're looking up at buildings, like in a business district where buildings are taller. There's lots of old stone buildings here. And they're very well built. These buildings have been around forever. So I think that tells to the type of wind that the city saw as well. But to see piles of rubble that are just like the size of a building, it's like your brain can't quite wrap its mind around what you're seeing because it's so out of place. And so, this morning was the first morning that I had woke up and like my adrenaline was kind of over and I was tired and I was a little bit more susceptible to feeling emotional about what I was seeing. And so, it's devastating. I guess I feel very privileged to be here and to be able to, everyone here has been so welcoming and wanting to share their stories. And as a reporter in this age, if somebody thanks you for your job and doing the work you're doing, it really goes a long way. So, and the people we've done stories on, we're so glad, they're like, we're so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Do you need a coffee? You know what I mean? Like, even, I think almost every single interview I did in town, in Mayfield, where there's a lot of destruction, was interrupted by somebody walking around, just offering water, offering coffee. Hey, I don't know you, but is this your house? Are you okay? Can I help you? And, oh, you're here out of town. Do you have everything you need? Like, there was a lot of that. And so I'm feeling very, touched and moved by the generosity of, you know, the people of Kentucky who, I mean, they're extremely resilient, and it's very inspiring to see people sort of put down their differences. And I think this type of event obviously puts everything in perspective. And, you know, like everybody we've talked to, like if somebody checks us out at like the gas station, it's not weird for me to be like, you know, for there to be an exchange of like, are you okay? How's your family? You know, which is not something you usually say to somebody checking you out at the gas station. But it all feels very, you know, kind of in the moment. And people are being very caring and very conscious and very kind. And that's been very lovely to witness.
A very exhausted Hunter McKee and Augusta McDonnell.
Yeah.
You guys travel safe. You're very tired. I mean, it's going to be one of those deals. Just try to keep your eyes open.
Okay. Oh, yeah. We'll stop if we need to. Thank you, Scott. We'll see you.
Thank you, Augusta.
Bye.
Okay, so she's worn out. And Hunter was on last night when I produced their education special last night, which the last couple of weeks, I mean, they've killed it in ratings. So really good shows that she's doing on education. So they're on their way 5 days of these stories. And today with the president, I am going to put those pictures up probably tomorrow of Nora O'Donnell and the CBS crew with all the light panels, and Hunter and Augusta were really competing with the networks, you know, trying to get those stories. It was something to see. So I'll put those up. So that's what we had from her earlier this afternoon. So next week, I'm sure she'll be back as host of this. Now, a little lighter fare is I was just sending messages to Ryan about that the National Football League is now a super spreader of COVID. And we saw universities being shut down, also shut down for a couple of weeks is Health Watch Oklahoma. And if you were with us, your regular viewer, you know, the docs are taking a couple of weeks off. This has been the COVID show, which started out as a COVID show that went as a general health show and then went back to COVID, was all we were covering, is on a couple of weeks hiatus. Dr. Bookman has been doing all of this for 20 months, soon to be 21 months. So we have information, health information. We'll be doing streams and have some of our Wednesday night program. Something I promised earlier was that I did recorded a video a week or so ago with Dino Lalli, movie dude. You know him. He hosts Discover Oklahoma. He does movie reviews on News 9, News on 6. He's everywhere. He's been in, you know, he's a major leaguer in terms of covering movies, and a friend and one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And of course, you've heard me talk about Ryan Welton's musical prowess. He understands this industry like nobody else. He's a musician, a composer, a performer, all of these things. And so I asked him a couple of weeks ago, I said, will you guys help us out for folks that are going to be gifting music and movies, and people going to movies? And, you know, we just recently saw places like Tower Theater and other venues. It's been a couple of months, but people are now going to live venues. So people want to buy music, and that was always a big thing at Christmas time was music. So I've asked Ryan, I said, you know, tell us something we don't know, that we're not going to just see, you know, the ones they fill out that, oh, here's what you should, you know, that's done every year. Do something different. Give us something different, which he did. And then we put Dino on the spot about some movies. Candace and I saw Murder in the House of Gucci a couple of weeks ago. I thought it was really good. Dino's like, he's not that big about it. And then there's some things that Ryan was talking about, and we'll have the video. It's about an hour and 10 minutes, which goes into House of Gucci. And I mean, we're covering everything, movie studios in Oklahoma City, music studios in Tulsa, things of this nature. I sat down the other night and I was driving someplace this week, and I listened to Hank Wilson's Back. And so, you know, when you think about church studios there in Tulsa and all the great history there. So a couple of real quick videos. This was me trying to get Ryan and Dino to tell us what to watch and don't go see. So, you know, both of them are really extra kind people. So they do more along the lines of telling you what you should go see, not what you shouldn't go see. We'll start with this one. I believe this is about what you should go see. Here's Dino.
I would recommend people, if you're a Guillermo del Toro fan, see Nightmare Alley. Great cast, movie looks great. Their production designer, set designer, art director. I'd like to see all nominations for them. That would be one to stay afterwards. If you haven't seen Dune, I'd recommend Dune. Belfast. If you want to see some people chewing up the scenery, go see House of Gucci. It's like a really nice pizza. I'll leave it at that. But look for, between now and the end of the year, West Side Story, I think, is going to be the one that I'm really looking forward to, directed by Steven Spielberg. Something very quickly that I just remembered. Stephen Sondheim, we all know, passed away recently. This was the first musical he ever wrote. West Side Story is the first musical Spielberg's ever done. That hit me just the other day, and so I watched the trailer again yesterday, and that's one of those that gave me chills. I cannot wait to see that movie, and thinking that it's been 18 years since the last Matrix movie, and then now here comes the new one. There's a lot of blue pills in the trailer, and then later we see a red pill. So it looks really exciting, and I think it's also very interesting to see that in 1999, I believe, how that movie sort of changed the face of effects. And looking at the trailer, it looks like they are still continuing in that whole mode. But keep an eye out for Don't Look Up. Jennifer Lawrence, Leonardo DiCaprio. I keep hearing a lot of buzz with that. And if you're a Marvel fan, Spider-Man No Way Home is coming out on the 17th. Keep an eye out for that.
Well, and our last thought as we head towards the hour and we'll get out of here. When are we going to see, when is the movie that finished in Oklahoma? A little movie, a little director, kind of well-known, a couple of actors. When is that? When are we going to see that at the theaters?
Well, I've read that it might be ready this time next year, but then I've also talked to a few people and said it might be spring of 2023. Post-production on a movie like this is just going to take forever, but they were fairly on schedule. And I'm not talking about COVID. COVID delayed them, period, before they started in Oklahoma. I'm talking once they started in Oklahoma, everything seemed to go pretty smoothly. So I would love to see it a year from now. I cannot wait to see it. Jesse Plemons, by the way, who's in that film, and is also in The Power of the Dog with Benedict Cumberbatch and Kirsten Dunst. I think he's a very underrated actor, but I think he's kind of coming into his own of late. But anyway, go back to your question, Scott. I'd love to see it a year from now. That's when I personally would love to see it. And if not, then it probably will be spring of 2023.
Well, Merry Christmas to you guys. Thanks so much for taking the time to help us understand what we need to go see. All right. So that was he obviously Don't Look Up. And by the way, one person I know who has seen every iteration of West Side Story from Broadway to the first movies is our own dear beloved Monday night host, Dr. Larry Bookman, who has seen everything West Side Story. And he saw it the other day. And it was like, I wasn't that fired up about it. All right. So the very last feature tonight was what I was asking Ryan Welton. So what would you recommend people gift in terms of music gifts this year? Coming, man. So one of the greatest musicians I know is Ryan Welton.
Oh, you're very kind.
Okay,
Actually,
composer, composer, a player, a pianist, vocalist. He does all these things. People,
music is very subjective. I wore a shirt in Hall and Oates. Just music is super subjective. It's funny. My favorite album of the year is by a brother-sister duo. They have an 8-person band. They're called Lawrence. They're out of New York City. Clyde and Gracie Lawrence. Their father is Mark Lawrence, who is a producer on movies like Music and Lyrics. And let me make sure I've got that right. I believe it was Music and Lyrics and 2 Weeks Notice. I'm sorry, not Music and Lyrics. It was Miss Congeniality and 2 Weeks Notice. And Clyde, when he was 5 years old, they didn't quite like a song in music in Miss Congeniality. He went back home to Clyde, who now at 28, his voice sounds like a young Randy Newman. And they had him rewrite a song, and they sent it back in blind without knowing that it was the producer's son or a guy that worked on the movie, and they ended up using it. So it's a musical family. It's an embarrassment of riches. His voice is great. Her voice is great. And they write clever, eccentric pop. When you think about, if you remember an album from a group called, it was the folks who did Stacy's Mom, about it's Fountains of Wayne, Adam Schlesinger, from about 18 years ago. Just really good, smart pop music. And their album, Hotel TV, for me, is the best album I've heard all year. The whole thing from front to back. And it's
called Hotel TV?
Hotel TV.
Okay.
It was a TikTok that caught my ear from a song called Don't Lose Sight. And it was just so catchy. So I just, in earworm catchy. And then you went and listened to the rest of the album. Every song is just clever. And that's the type of music I like. And so I don't know that it would be everybody's cup of tea. I would tell you, I think the best album, I mainly look at like Metacritic and the New York Times list of what they think is really good. And I look at the Grammys list. I listen to my own thing too, but I'm really wanting to hear something as a musician that inspires me. That's what I'm looking for. When I listened to John Batiste's album, We Are, I was inspired, not just by the fact that he put together such a brilliant album, but I listened for little things like chord changes. There's a song called Cry on there. And I'm like, ooh, that was good. It was really good. And it's how songwriters will be like, you know what? That may have to go into a song that I do a little bit later on. And it's just a chord progression. But one of the themes that I saw, and I would have to, it's a very New Orleans album. It's a very positive album. It's not deep and introspective and brooding. It is happy. It may be deep and introspective, but it is a happy album. It's as if it's as if a jazz band leader and Pharrell Williams sort of meshed, because it's modern day smart. And I don't know how the Grammy folks are going to vote. I think the fact that he got nominated is attributable to the change in the Grammy voting system, which they allow, instead of having a committee just pick the albums, it's everybody. So I have no idea how the vote's going to go. I can just tell you what I liked, and out of that Grammy list, it was John Batiste's We Are and a young woman named Gabby Wilson, who goes by the name Her, H-E-R, stands for Having Everything Revealed. If you were a fan of Prince in the 80s, it's just really smart. As a guy who's 51, I feel a little old listening to some of the things, because I'm like, yeah, I'm not supposed to like this, but I appreciate just how well done it is. And what a good guitar player. I think it's her playing guitar on the record. And I'm like, she's good. She's real good.
She is really good. She's incredible talent. Yeah.
And on the Grammy list, ABBA has a record out there, and they're nominated for Song of the Year, which goes to the songwriter for a song called I Still Have Faith in You. And I will tell you, it sounds like ABBA. It sounds like, the winner takes it all. It's 1981 all over again. But it's, it depends who you're giving a gift for. In country music, you got a guy named Jimmy Allen, who I think is, and a singer named Mickey Guyton, breaking color barriers, if you will, on the country music scene. And Jimmy Allen's album is really good. I mean, it's very pop country, not bro country. It's just pop country.
My ears are just burning on this. Anything that's out of Nashville, just.
So although I will tell you, as somebody who's liked Toby Keith forever, I've actually always enjoyed his music. His newest album, Peso in My Pocket, the lead single is Oklahoma Breakdown, written by Norman's own Mike Hosty, who I think is the bard of Oklahoma. He wouldn't know me.
Mike Hosty, you're saying?
Yeah, you bet. And he wouldn't know me from Adam, but I've seen him play at the Deli 100 times. I own pretty much every album the dude has, and to me, Mike is to Norman what Lyle Lovett is to College Station. And he's just that good. And the fact that Toby said, you know what, I need to record that song is a pretty good ode. That particular album does end with a song called Happy Birthday America, which is basically if you made Fight Inside of Me bro country, that's what it would be. So again, not for everybody.
Yeah, but Toby's not bro country. He's not kind of in a category of, I think of bro country is I think that, they've got a machine like Stepford Wives,
right. Right.
which is they crank them out, which is like they all look and sound like Luke Bryan.
Right.
Come in.
But, and
Do you have an adenoid problem? Yeah. Step up. We get a contract.
The thing I would always say about Toby Keith is good writer, not just good writer. I don't want to undersell it. He's a great writer. And just over the years, I'm like, it's just, I've always, you're a Garth guy or a Toby Keith guy. I don't know if that's how it goes. I was always a Toby Keith guy.
Listen, when he did that cover of Barry White with Wayman Tisdale, what, maybe 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay. So anybody who underappreciates Toby for his vocals, you listen to that. It's better. Yeah. He and Wayman on that record were better than Barry White's version.
Right. And by the way, I had a buddy who would always say that Wayman was a better bass player than he was a basketball player. And he was a brilliant basketball player.
He's a brilliant musician. Does not get enough of that sort of thing. That's pretty incredible. I mean, we have so many musicians, but the media narrative in Oklahoma is the country, right? There's so much more.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you, there was one guy out there that I found named Seth Lee Jones. And mind you, I'm going on my own discovery for this because I'm like, I want to bring something Oklahoma to the mix. He's not only a blues musician, he is, and I just learned this word, he is a luthier or luthier. Do you know what a luthier is? He makes his own guitars. He is a guitar maker. So he's a craftsman.
Really?
And I listened to his album Flathead, and I was like, it's really good. Now, mind you, I played in a blues band back in the 90s for a while, but I'm still very much a novice listener. When I hear his style of slide guitar, I hear a country guy named Leroy Parnell. I hear a lot of that. But it was just a really good album. Had his cover of Tulsa Time on there. And I was like, this is a guy that I should know and that everybody else should know.
And give me his name again. I'm taking notes with you, Ryan. Because
well, his name is Seth Lee Jones.
Seth Lee Jones. Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, I wrote down, I said, I hear everything from Leroy Parnell to at one point, Eddie Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen has a very distinct sound, and I could hear him paying homage to Eddie, at least in my opinion, in one of the early songs on the CD.
The man knows his music. So that video will be up in a couple of days. That's an hour with Dino Lalli and Ryan Welton talking about what they like, they don't like, what they'd recommend, the John Baptiste thing. I mean, I'm going to go listen to that. Also some of those other things. Dino was writing those notes. So that's coming to Mitchell Talks, perhaps even to News 9. We'll see you in the next 3 days. We'll have some excerpts about what to buy and what not to see. We have a really fun discussion about House of Gucci or Murder at whatever the thing was called, the Pacino Kylo Ren movie. So with Lady Gaga. So it's really fun. It's a fun video to do with those guys. It goes about 1 hour and 4 minutes or so, and we'll put that up next few days. All right, to our friends Larry, who was on tonight, Isabella, who tuned in. Thanks very much for watching this. It is not as much fun when Augusta's not here, but we were glad to get a few minutes with her as they were leaving Kentucky with that disaster up there. And they're headed home as she and Hunter McKee and be back in our state very, very soon. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday, the rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you back here next week. Have a great evening, everyone.